Great. Hi, my name is Paula Kirkwood. I am the most recent past president of the AVTE, and I don't ever do these town halls because I'm terrified of, all things that can go wrong, and anything that can go wrong will go wrong when it comes to electronics with me. But I was coerced into doing this. And today is a really fun topic, well, fun and difficult topic, is all about VTNE student success on the VTNE. And we have panelists with us today that will hopefully be able to help us in any possible way, help our students with their success on the VTNE. We have Salvador Hurtado, Lori Lobdell, and Eileen McKee representing different colleges, and we have Nancy Gripman representing the AAVSB. And I thank them for coming here. And I think what I'd like to do is have you reintroduce yourselves, tell us where your program is located, how many students, like where are you located, how many students do you accept, each time in each year in your program, and let's start with that, and let's start with Salvador. Why don't we start with Salvador?
Hello, my name is Salvador Hurtado, and I've been teaching at the Pierce College Bennett Technology Program since 1996. I became program director in 2008. So again, I work at the Pierce College Bennett Technology Program in Lakewood, Washington. Lakewood is located adjacent to Tacoma, just south of Seattle, about half an hour south of Seattle. And our program has been here since, I believe, 1969. We've been accredited since 1974. So we are currently admitting 24 students a year. We have 2 student cohorts. And so 24 students is where we're at. That's numbers partly based on the new requirements that we have to maintain a certain instructor to student ratio within the labs. And so we settled on 24. Let's see, as far as our graduates taking the VTNE, everyone takes the VTNE once they graduate from our program. It is very rare that anybody would not take the VTNE. So everyone takes it once they graduate, unless they're from another country and they're not needing to take the VTNE because they're going back to their home country. Sometimes we get students that come from other states and they're going back to a state where the VTNE is not required for licensure. But as far as anyone from the state of Washington who wants to work as a veterinary technician here, they all take the VTNE, and it's rare that a graduate would not take it. Yeah.
Okay, thank you for that. Wow, we had to sometimes really talk our students into taking it, incredibly. Eileen, why don't you go next?
Sure. I'm Eileen McKee. I am a faculty and program director at Joliet Junior College in Joliet, Illinois. I worked with Dr. Keller. So I think I've been a program director now 6 years and 20 years teaching. And as far as the class size, we admit 48, although we briefly admitted 60 at one point during COVID, just because we had so many applicants. It was very difficult to support them. And then, of course, with the requirements of the teacher and student ratio, we've gone back to 48 this year. As far as students sitting for the VTNE, we have recently seen a dip in the amount of students taking the exam. And I really don't have a number for you, but we're wondering if it's financial. We're trying to get that information from them. A lot of them who do not want to sit for it yet tell us that they don't feel prepared. And one thing that we did change in the past year is we are allowing our students to sit for the boards prior to graduation, because Illinois is one of the few states that allows that. And we were seeing a pretty substantial hit in our VTNE pass rates, which I'm not sure how many of you feel like COVID impacted your testing success. We definitely feel like that has been a problem. We also have a pretty heavy reliance on adjuncts. So I think there's a lack of consistency there. So there's, probably several reasons why we've had some concerns with that pass rate. But when we allowed students to sit for the boards in the spring, that spring window, right after their capstone class, where we focus on the VTNE, a little bit of VTNE prep, we're suddenly seeing our numbers go back up. So, and I'm not sure if it's the students who wait to sit in the summer after graduation that are the ones who are not necessarily as successful. So just kind of, lots of things that are interesting. We certainly don't have all of the answers, but trying to always figure it out and figure out what will work for our students. Sorry, I went a little long there.
That's totally fine. It's very, very interesting information. I should preface this to say that the reason we picked these three speakers was because their VTNE success rate is very high. And by very high, I don't have specific numbers, but it's anything anybody would be extremely proud. So it's, in and around 90% or above pass rate. So that's a very good pass rate. So that's why we picked. Of course, there's a lot of colleges out there that are at that level. Sorry, and then I need to preface this again, is this information that I got for these colleges was from about 2016, 2017. And so it's a little old and certainly pre-COVID, so that does make a difference. But that is why we picked these people. We just didn't pick randomly. Sorry, and now on to Lori.
Thanks, Paula. My name's Lori Lobdell. I am the program director at Parkland College in Champaign, Illinois. Champaign is in central Illinois, also home of the University of Illinois. Our program has been around since 1974 also. I have been teaching and program director for about 12 years. We did have to adjust also our student numbers, so it's interesting to hear what everybody has been saying. We were taking 36, and then with the ratio change, we went down to 32. So we now accept 32 students in the fall. We just take one cohort, so we have two cohorts, the first and second year students. It also is very rare that any of our students do not take the exam. In the 12 years I've been here, I think I can think of maybe two that did not. One, when she graduated, just decided that she didn't want to be licensed. Another one was kind of nervous and waited a year to take it. But most of our students do take it. So we're very happy about that, because that is very important to us that they sit for the exam.
Great. Well, thank you for that, all of you. I guess on to our next question, because we haven't gotten into the meat of things yet. And we'll start with Salvador again. And the question will be, what is the strategy you would say has the greatest impact on your VTNE pass rate? If everything impacts it, we understand, but if you can kind of narrow down one or two or three.
Well, again, I thought about the question, and I don't know that the answers that I came up with are completely true and accurate. But just thinking about what we do, well, I think there are some things to consider. We have a selective admissions process. So we're not an open enrollment program. So students have to apply for admission. And so we base admission on prerequisite course grades and assessment test scores. And so we admit students based on their application score. And so we take students with the highest prerequisite course grades and the highest assessment test scores into the program. We also have minimum passing grades for all of our program courses. The minimum passing grade for any course in our program is 70%. And then some of the courses that have more of a clinical applications require a 75% in order for students to pass. Failing one course in our program results in dismissal of the student from the program until the following year. We also have capstone courses just before the students go out on externship, which we feel help prepare them for the externship as well as the VTNE. And those are the three things that I could think of that I think make a difference in terms of student success on the VTNE.
All right, well, important ways to do that that you've discovered. So fantastic. How about Eileen? What have you guys got up your sleeve?
Well, similar to Salvador, we also have selective admissions. We did have the fail where the student had to, reapply, and they couldn't do so until the following year. And we had a dean that wanted us to address that policy, and I think her thought was interesting. She said, well, if you're removing the student from academia, how is that helping them to be successful? And so we had to address retention. That was one of the things that we were having to make some changes. So we actually now offer a repeat for every class that is failed. The student can repeat it once. And then if they repeat that class and are still not successful, then they have to go through an appeal process. If they are admitted on appeal, they can attempt that course one more time, and then that's it. There are no other avenues for them to go through that program. We did just start a vet tech assistant program, and we kind of help them to go towards that as a possible alternative. And then we also think that may be something that will help our vet tech students if they do that VTA certificate first. It's a 1 semester certificate program. So that just started this fall. So we will see. We do have quite a few applicants from that VTA certificate. What else? We try to do quite a bit of assessments throughout the program. Just small quizzes and exams. We try to a lot of those on some of the VTNE prep materials, because I think that we're thinking that may help them to be able to read those exam questions and find the most correct answer. Some of the instructors also use the computer labs so that they're actually sitting for those tests in a computer situation, and maybe that will help them get used to that format. Let's see. And then we try to use those domain scores after the boards to just kind of reevaluate our curriculum, and then potentially look at our assessments. And we're constantly, readjusting our curriculum and assessments to, see if there's something that we need to go a little bit deeper into one area. And I think those are our methods that we're trying to use.
Well, they sound great. Yeah, you can never change. Everything changes all the time, so you're constantly having to, pick up your stuff and run to the next idea, because it's just how it is. Lori, what do you guys?
Well, I'm actually really glad we're doing this, because I'm starting to feel even better about my program, because it sounds like we all do the same things. Similar to Salvador and Eileen, We are a selective admissions program. Another thing that's interesting is that I've noticed some differences with other programs across the country is we're actually in the health professions department. So we have a little bit different standards. And our grades, actually, they have to have a 75 to get a C, and that's in all of our courses. They also have to, if they fail one course, have to return a year later. The other thing that was similar is that we do have a capstone course right at the end before they sit for their exam. And we do a lot of quizzing. Students complain about it a lot, but in their last 2 semesters, it's a lot of quizzing, repeating, testing over a lot of different areas. So, and it's also electronic, which I think helps since it's an electronic exam. So we're all doing similar things, which really, really makes me happy to know that.
That's great. It's true, because you kind of wonder, don't you? Like, I don't know what I'm doing. You know, I think all of us, when we first start become like when we're directors, we're like, why am I director? I don't know what I'm doing. And so you kind of run with it and you hope you're doing with it. So when you are validated like that, Lori, it's a good thing. I think
Paula, can I add something here before we move on? Eileen said a couple of things that we're doing here too, and I do want to mention that we definitely pay attention to our question format and make it similar to the VTNE question format. One of our instructors used to be an item writer for the VTNE, so she's helped us, you know, with the format of the questions. And so our questions are very simple. Well, we try to format our questions to like those of the VTNE, and I think that's helpful. We also look at VTNE domain scores after each testing session to see how student performance is lining up with our expectations. I don't know that we necessarily have made many changes from that because our score seems to be pretty consistent, but if there was a discrepancy, we would identify it and try to address it expeditiously.
That's great. And that's amazing. You've got somebody on your team that used to be a writer, a question writer, because as you said writing it in a similar manner, in a similar, help me out people, tone and the way they ask questions. Boy, that'd be nice to have one of those on your I don't know, just as a help. I wonder if we could do that.
Well, I believe in the past there's been presentations at AVTE conferences where they talked about, you know, how to write a good multiple choice question. Right. And I think some of the presenters, I think, have been item writers for the VTNE. Right. So I think that's that's definitely a good workshop to attend.
Maybe that's a premise for me to jump in here, Paula.
Great. Yeah, Nancy, go ahead.
I didn't get to introduce myself, but Nancy Gritman.
I'm sorry, Nancy. I'm terribly sorry.
That's okay. With the AAVSB, and I am currently the Chief Risk Management Officer. So my roles changed slightly this past year. And actually, I want to introduce Amy Farmer. She can wave there. Amy is our Senior Director of Mobility, and in addition to the Vault team, she is now overseeing exams. So we've been working together in that transition. Carol Sparrow is also here. Carol has been the program manager for exams for the past several years. A veteran of AAVSB. She is retiring at the end of June. So we actually are in the process of interviewing for a new program manager. But in my role, I've been with AAVSB for 12.5 years and have from the very beginning been involved as initially the program manager for the VTNE, and then overseeing all of the exams, and most recently was senior director of all the programs and services. So in my new role, I still work very closely. I will be at AVTE again this year, presenting with Dr. Irene Moore, who is the current VTNE committee chair, and will be providing a presentation similar to what Salvador mentioned. We'll really be focusing on the new content outline. That content outline, which we announced here in April, that was approved by the board of directors. The VTNE committee and item writers are diligently have been working, had a meeting in April, working on new practice tests that will be launched. Launched here August 15th. So we're waiting to launch everything until we finish the current application and exam administration, July 15th to August 15th. So 2 new practice tests will be available to purchase. And I'll say a little bit more about that in a bit. And then the content outline will be aligned to the November-December exam administration windows. So Irene and I will be talking a little bit about the content outline, and also we always do talk a bit about item writing and that. But that being said, we always encourage instructors and academia, if they're interested in being a subject matter expert for the VTNE, all you have to do is email us, and we have an application form, and we are always looking for individuals to write items remotely, or if VTNE committee members may not be available for a meeting, we'll have other subject matter experts come in, or during the job analysis, we're always looking and working with our allied organizations for a group for the job analysis committee, which obviously we just finished. And so I also want to note that Dr. Scott Keller is AVT representative to the VTNE committee now, along with Trish Gorman. And I think Trish is out of the country, or she was out of the country, so she maybe wasn't able to join this evening, but will certainly be at AVTE, as I believe she's on the board as well right now. So, but glad to be here. And I think, and I'll just comment, and then Paula, you can continue, but, you know, Salvador and Eileen, you know, mentioned the importance of really looking at your reports that we do provide, and in particular, looking at your domain scores and how your students, your first time takers in particular, are comparing to others. And so, and then, you know, from there, you can obviously look at the full content outline and domain areas to see where you might need to put some more emphasis in. With that, the newest content outline, in the new content outline, the job analysis survey that was completed and that supported adding additional domain communication and veterinary professional support services. Now I'll note that there were more than likely questions, items in other areas around that, but the job analysis and the trends supported having its own domain. So there may not necessarily be new questions because they perhaps were already in the VTNE, but again, more of an emphasis on that to really bring that domain to light as we move forward with the next in the next 5 years. And every 5 to 7 years, the AVSB completes a job analysis to look at trends, to look at what is being taught in academia. We look at all of that, but definitely supported by our job analysis study and survey.
Thank you, and I apologize again.
Okay, you're fine.
I think I'd like to open it to questions from people. If you want to put questions in the chat, I believe that's how you ask questions on these things. If you want to put questions in to our 3 experts and our 3 experts from the AVSB, anything you have to question them. And I don't know how to check that on the chat. Anything that Carol and Amy would like to add as far as what you're thinking about, and as you've, I think Carol, you're fairly new, is that correct?
I'm not new. I'm almost at 10 years with the
Oh, okay.
AAVSB, actually.
Sorry.
No, I
But
might
you've
just,
taken over. You've taken over, right?
we are in the middle of our largest application window right now, the July-August exam. So we are just flooded with emails, questions, transcript questions. And that just reminds me to remind you, our staff is always available to make presentations to your school, to walk candidates through the process of applying for the VTNE, what it looks like. We've done 1 or 2 presentations. Lainey Franklin is our member concierge, and she is on the student outreach task force, I believe it is, and really going to concentrate more and hopefully do some more with the VTNE. But I would love to get the word out to all of your schools that we're available to do presentations. We know when you're starting those capstone classes with your students and they're nearing the end of the program and getting close to the time to apply to take the VTNE, we have the expertise to walk them through and guide them through the process.
And I'll add to that what the student outreach is focusing on, not only for the VTNE, but for the veterinary students and the NAVLE is having those presentations with the regulatory boards, so that it's a presentation where your students will get more insight on the licensure process. And then also, again, as Carol mentioned, that we can give them some insights on the processes on the VTNE and tips that we have and opportunities to take the practice test and those kinds of things. So and with that, if you aren't familiar, the AVSB does have discounts, group discounts for the schools to purchase, as a school, purchase a number of practice tests that your students can take, and the program director will have access to those practice test scores that you can then take your students through and give them some feedback on, well, this is a content area that you didn't perform as well. Here's some suggestions in that. So that is something that, we've made available for a number of years and have quite a number of schools taking advantage of that with the group discount. So again, just letting us know on that. Amy, do you want to chime in?
I am actually the one that is newer to the program. So I guess replaced Nancy as the senior director in January. So I'm learning, but I appreciate the opportunity to sit here and listen to this. I'm over here taking notes and trying to decide if I can figure out how to copy the chat before this thing closes. But no, just I'm open to suggestions and questions, and I can put my contact information in the chat if you'd like to send me an email later, but any of us are open to that, and just don't hold back. That might be a scary thing to say, but let us know how we can help you.
Can I jump in there? This is Eileen. I
Yeah.
just have a couple questions. Carol, when, and I can't believe we've been doing this 20 years and I didn't realize we could have a speaker come out and guide us through, our students through this process. I'm really excited about that. When we have that kind of speaker, are they going to be able to help students with the outside entity? Like in Illinois, it's the continental testing, that intermediary, that entire process? Or because I think sometimes in Illinois, that's one of the, Lori and I have had this discussion before, that we have some issues because of that additional entity.
It's very, very interesting that you bring that up. One of the very first things I learned when I started working for the AAVSB and with VTNE candidates back in 2013 was how difficult it was to navigate the Illinois website to figure out how the heck to apply for the VTNE. So I learned the process myself so that I could help people if they were emailing. I know you have a new website now, or the state has a new website, and it seems to be much more streamlined, but we try very hard. We have a wonderful staff. We provide excellent customer service. And one of our goals is to understand those unique processes so that we can help candidates through. So, I mean, we can steer them. We can't, you know, you need to do this first and this first, and you've got to go to this website. We could certainly help and gear a particular presentation toward those things.
And I think it also, Eileen, might be helpful. We could also, you know, again, reach out to Illinois and see if they would be interested in doing a joint presentation. Obviously, we've been doing a lot virtually. We partnered with Manitoba VMA and did a presentation for one of the I can't think of which Red River?
Red River.
I think it was Red River. So we did a presentation with them virtually as we partnered with Manitoba. So they sort of gave the insight on the licensure process, and then actually there probably ended up being more questions around the VTNE, but it was a great opportunity. And like I said, we continue to do that, and our AVSB board of directors and student outreach has really put an emphasis on this. It started like the emphasis was on this with the veterinary students in NAVLE right about the time the pandemic hit. So we're now, you know, ready to ramp up again and start to also focus on VTNE, although, you know, as you know, we've always been available and provided presentations and for the past several years.
And we appreciate you being there, because I think that I do believe the VTNE, the talks, anything to do with VTNE are not sold out, because you know what I mean, but just like, you know, standing room only. And I don't think that's going to change anytime soon. Any other questions from people? We have some questions in the chat. If I could just start looking at them. Steve, what would you like to say? You're on mute.
So I'm the Zuka review guy. So I'd be happy to share some things we've seen in the last 6 or 12 months.
Great.
But I'm curious what's happening in the VTNE world from Nancy and Amy and Carol. it does look like in other tests, like certainly the NAVLE and the BCSE, that there was definitely a pandemic effect and pass rates dropped. And I'm talking internationally across the world, but particularly in North America. Has VTNE seen something like that? Because what it looks like is students that started veterinary school in the middle of the pandemic, about the time the pandemic got over, they had to take the test and their performances were not as good. I'm wondering if VTNE saw something similar.
Well, I think, I think in general that has been a concern. We all attend a lot of conferences that are geared for associations like ours that also own and administer licensure exams. And I think, there has been a concern with that. The VTNE, to be honest, has stayed pretty constant in our pass rates. And so I think, from that perspective, and what I always like to emphasize is that when we go through a job analysis, and the next step coming up here actually in August is for the committee to go through a standard setting study in which we establish the pass rate. Those studies, and then as we continue with the exam statistics that we receive really support and ensure the reliability and the validity of the exam. So in that, I think Steve, you're correct in that there has been all across the board some fluctuation in those pass rates, but again, from a perspective of the consistency, the VTNE continues to remain pretty constant. We have obviously, real recently, we provided a presentation, for example, to the California board, as did the the ICVA organization on the NAVLE, and addressed more on what we do, what both organizations do actually from a validity and reliability and that standard setting perspective, and the science that's involved in that to ensure that we're consistent and fair across the board in the administration of the exam. So
I noticed some other program directors talked about it seemed like people struggled more, and I'm just curious if that was for people in the audience that are running programs, if you're experiencing challenges like that. We certainly see that for the veterinary students and some of the internationals.
I can say retention has been an issue during COVID.
Yeah.
So when COVID hit, that class that we had went from 32 and ended up, we only graduated 14 students.
Yeah.
So our VTNE pass rate was good because we only had 14 take it. But our retention, had suffered quite a bit.
Motivated.
Yes, they were motivated.
And Steve, your comment too, I think even if you look at some of the standardized testing, the ACT, the SATs also obviously saw some similar concerns across the board, because it certainly was a topic in different again conferences that we've attended in the past couple of years. So
Salvador, you
It's
had
been hard
something?
to- Sorry, go
Yeah.
ahead.
Something interesting that we saw here during COVID when we had to go completely online is that our retention rate improved. More students were moving through our program. The problem was that when we returned to face-to-face and we were having students test on campus, we saw great attrition happen at that point. So they were doing really good when they're being assessed online remotely. And then suddenly when they were testing in person, they did not do so good. We don't know what was happening during the remote testing, but that made us a bit concerned. So everything we're doing is face-to-face now, and especially assessments.
I think Jennifer had a question, and I'll go ahead and try to answer it very quickly and simply. So, does the pass rate change each year depending on participant performance in a given year? No, it doesn't, in the fact that and this is standard for any type of licensure and credentialing exam. A pass rate is set typically at the time that you complete your job analysis. And so very briefly in the exam development process, there then is a sort of an anchor form. And so throughout each administration, as you have different forms, that anchor is that constant, so that's fair and consistent. Within that, there are items that are at different levels, and so different cognitive levels. And so there might be a slight variation that you see as you're receiving those reports from administration to administration, but it's still anchored to that standard setting pass rate that is established at the time of a job analysis, and it sees it through all the way through the 5 years of all of those forms. So as I said, as we have a new content outline in August, the committee will be going through this standard setting exercise, which is not pretty, it's very stringent and mind-boggling for everyone, but our psychometricians with PSI, our exam vendor, do an excellent job of taking the group through that. And then once that is established, the AVSB Board of Directors approves that, and that becomes our anchor throughout the next 5 years of the exam. And so it ensures that you have a fair and consistent exam no matter what time you're taking it, whether you're taking it in November, December of 2023 or July, August of 2026. It is still fair and consistent for any of the candidates taking their exam. So I hope that's about as simple and brief as I can be in that.
Okay, thank you for that. I have a question at on the chat that says, well, the first question is, we're a younger program. The first comment, accredited in 2015, are having trouble attracting students. It's frustrating. Part of it is the DVMs are so willing to hire non-RVTs. And that is such, Patricia, Zaina brought that to, and yes, yeah, welcome to our world. And that's a whole other thing that I don't know if we can address in one sitting or not, probably not at all. Anyway, that's a constant problem, Patricia. So the next question I have on the chat line, I just have to find it. Oops, sorry. Did that? No. Oh, is anybody using, what is it? Is anybody using, are any of you using the Evolve Vet Tech HESI in your program? Anybody? Patricia is? Do you want to unmute and talk about that? No?
Yes, I couldn't find my button. Yeah, sure. I think that that once we instituted the HESI, even though it's a little bit cumbersome to, I've talked to other program directors who've said that they, stopped trying to use it because, it's just, navigating, getting it set up can be a little cumbersome, but no, it's not. impossible. I think our pass rate went way up because what we did was, and it was from attending AVTE one year when there was the comment about if the HESI rate pass score was over 700, I think it was it 750? We require a pass rate of 750 to graduate from our program. So you, those students going on to take the AVTE are, I mean, the VTNE are pretty well set up to take the test. Our pass rates have been pretty good. And I actually think they're better after through COVID and post COVID. So the HESI is a comprehensive exam. So I just think requiring them to, we do a capstone class and then requiring them to have, you can't end a program without a comprehensive test. And that's just a really good way of having one without having to write it.
Well said. My program never had a comprehensive test, and we should have. I mean, while I was there, we didn't. But our students did really well until about 2016, 15, 16, and then it just dropped. And I don't know what happened. But there you go. Let's finish off now with the final questions for our panelists, which is, what do you feel has been the greatest challenge to maintaining the level of your VTNE success? I don't know if you can pinpoint it, but Eileen, why don't we start with you and then we'll move on.
Sure. I think I mentioned that we are unfortunately heavily reliant upon adjunct faculty now. And I think that is something that I've read that it's kind of nationwide, that as faculty retire, we're not allowed to fill that position with another full-time person. It's all adjuncts. And so I truly believe that has been our greatest challenge, just keeping that consistency and constantly having to rehire, retrain. So we do try to provide materials for those adjuncts, but we do have academic freedom. So, they may change materials or how they test or how they grade. I think it's harder for an adjunct faculty to grade the way that full-time faculty may want to grade. So I truly believe that's one of the biggest problems. And then the other issue that I'm seeing is just reading comprehension. I think that students coming in, and I think Steve was kind of mentioning, or others were mentioning, just preparation for the program in general. I feel like they have difficulties reading the question completely and then reading those answers and just comprehending what's being asked. And so that's something that I think I'm going to look into that HESI, but any of the prep materials that we have done, the AAVSB exams, anything that will get them into that reading that repeatedly, I think is going to help.
That's great. Thank you. Lori, why don't you tell us what's going on?
Well, Eileen and I need to get together because we always have the same issues. Similar issue, losing faculty and not being able to replace those positions. Maybe it's an Illinois thing. I don't know. Maybe you got what rest of you out there also having the same issue, but and we all know that CVTs are hard to find in practice, let alone trying to get them to come teach for us part-time when they're already working. So this past year, I ended up teaching a lot more than I usually do. So I think just consistency, and I really am fighting really hard to get the college to let me hire one more full-time faculty. They even have admitted that we have enough ECH or load for another full-time faculty. College just fights that. They just don't want to have, they only want to have a certain number of full-time, which is just so silly to me. So that I think is my biggest challenge right now. And again, like Eileen said, just because even, when I came 12 years ago, getting the material from someone else, I might not teach it the same way. I might not test the same way. So there's always going to be that as you get those newer faculty in. And if you're constantly having turnover, then it's stressful for everybody.
Absolutely. You guys have both mentioned, part-time, or you call them adjunct faculty, and it's huge. Salvador, what have you say, sir?
Well, I mean, I guess I can say that we don't have we don't have problems hiring part-timers. Once we hire somebody who's interested in teaching, they seem to stay around with us for long periods of time. So we're fortunate in that regard. I'm not sure if it's the fact that we pay them well or why, but we don't seem to have a problem with hiring part-timers. I think our biggest challenge is, I guess, goes back to what Patricia was asking about, having enough applicants and getting enough students to the program. I think our biggest problem is just getting enough high caliber students that can actually make it through our program to get to the VTNE. We've seen a steady decline in the number of applicants to our program over the years, so that at this point, we're filling our class of 24, but we really don't have many more students beyond that have applied for admission to our program, and that's concerning. So yeah, that's our major concern.
I think that it's as more and more schools open, you have less chance to get the finest students, I suppose. Although, who would know? I'm trying to think. Who would know how many schools there are now? It's like 250, something like that.
I'm pretty sure, Paula, that I counted the other day. If I counted correctly, I came up with 251.
Oh, sure. Oh, sure. I wasn't good enough at 250. I wasn't good enough. You had to.
But I don't always count right. So you might be way more right than me.
No. No, I'm amazed that my brain came up with 250, that I remembered that. And has that gone down or up?
I can comment on that. It's starting, we get, a few here and there. There was a significant decrease when the number of for-profit schools in particular, those in the US side of things, the school accreditation was not recognized by the Department of Education. And so at that time there were 30 plus, maybe 30 plus schools that closed abruptly. And so, since then we've again, there started, we'll see about what Carroll 3, the CVTA reviews those twice a year, and we'll see about 3 or 4 in the spring and about 3 or so in the fall. And every once in a while, there's some that are closing as well. So you maybe go up 3 or 4 and maybe go down 1. Not usually. There's not very many that close, but that was when that drastically dropped back in 2016 or something 16, like that.
17, I think.
16, 17. Yeah. The other thing I just might add, while we have a great audience, is just a reminder of the VTNE scholarship that our board of directors approved. Now we're in our second year. So if you haven't taken advantage of identifying a recipient to receive a voucher for the VTNE, please do so. We opened up that to be able to provide those at multiple times during the year. And then we also, and I worked on that initially, and then it's been revised to help meet the school's needs, which is great. But our board of directors is so committed to that we want every school to be able to identify someone for that. And then obviously our Celebrating Diversity Award as well. DEI is so very important to us. And so when we established that and have been able to have a recipient for the past, I think this was, is it our 3rd year or 4th year? I worked on that as well, and time flies.
Yeah, I think we just announced our 3rd.
Our 3rd. So those are some new things that we had, and hope that the academia and students and that appreciate that, and because we certainly appreciate the board of directors for investing in that. So
That's great. I think we're coming to the end. There's one last thing that Scott Keller wanted put on the chats to check out the AAVSB website for sure, using the textbook resources. And yeah, it's very good. The list of abbreviations used on the VTNE, make sure the students know that. I think this is a topic that needs revisiting about 400 times a year. So maybe we'll have another one of these at some point, or maybe at the conference, maybe not this summer, but maybe in summer, something like this, just to chat it out and to, kvetch about how all of our students don't get 100% every single time. Anyway, I would like to thank again the speakers that came, Eileen McKee, Salvador Hurtado, Lori Lobdell, and our guests, Nancy Gritman, Carol Sparrow, and Amy Farmer from the AAVSB. And then all of you that came and listened and commented, thank you very much. Am I missing anything, Tim?
Thank you, Paula.
Oh, no worries.
Great job. And thank you everybody for attending tonight's town hall.